Posture is such an important factor when it comes to karate, and as well as that, it's also really important outside of karate. It's such a huge and important part of your technique. But there tend to be a couple of common issues that tend to arise when it comes to posture in karate. So as I mentioned earlier in the video very briefly, one of the common errors is that leaning forward action. Now this is normally caused simply because you are leaning forward too much, or there's a lack of control in the shoulders. When you have that lack of control with your upper body and especially your shoulders, you tend to have that falling feeling rather than having a good posture. That feeling of having your shoulders going forward means you have that lack of control, so when you do go to step forward or even step backwards, you can tend to lose your balance purely because your body wants to go forward and you haven't got that control. One of the common looks of the leaning forward action is once you finish your technique, you tend to have that hunched over feeling and that leaning forward slightly feeling. Then once you start trying to move faster, the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to end up falling forward. The more common issue comes from overarching your back. Now, this is normally done when someone is naturally told to keep your back straight. And especially from a stance position, when they say keep your back straight, that overarching of the lower back tends to happen and you have this curved feeling here. If I were to show you from the side, overarching your back looks very much like this, where my hips are going a lot more forward and my body is very, very curved. So this is actually a homemade solution, and we're going to be using your own belt to create a back brace. Now this is a really good simple way to make sure that your shoulders come back to improve your posture. Of course, you can get these back braces online, but they are crazy expensive. So this is a more simple version, and this is something that you can actually do at home or even when you train and practice your kata, doing your ki-on. Might be a bit tricky with kumite though. So first of all, just make sure the belt is nice and straight, nice and flat. All you're going to do is put the belt around your back, keep it up nice and high, and then the simple way to do this, well, there's no simple way. I'm going to try my best to explain this properly. You simply flip them over your shoulder, and then this is where the awkward bit comes in. If you need someone to help you, I'd probably advise you do that. So, at the moment, the belt is nice and straight. You've got to make sure that it makes a little cross at the back so that you can get the belt around the front this way. And this is where you can simply tie the belt as you normally would. So, as you can see from this position, it looks like I'm wearing something like a superhero outfit. But as you can see from the side, you see how much my posture has improved by my shoulders going back. This is just to raise awareness on how much your posture can improve by simply wearing this brace. Now, you can walk around the house and keep this on for a good half an hour, and that way you'll feel your posture so much better and you won't be hunched over. And again, you can take this into your training, and you see from the position of my punch, I'm not restricting my movement. I can still put my shoulder forward a little bit, but there's no feeling of falling forward like this. Everything is pulled back a little bit, and then when I do my movements, everything actually feels how it should be, especially on my upper body. There's no feeling of hunching over, and I'm not falling forward and losing my balance. Everything is nice and tight, everything is nice and firm, but I've got a really good posture, especially for my upper body. So moving on to a few things that you can do at home that will help you with your mobility and your strength, especially in your upper and lower back. The best thing you can do is a few little exercises and a couple of stretches that will massively help your mobility in your back. So one simple exercise would be helping you extend your back. Now you can either do this against the wall or you can do it on the floor. So I'm going to show you both. This is a really simple exercise where you simply have your hand on the wall, and it's almost like you're trying to get your head in between your arms while pushing your butt back. So when you come back this way, your head comes down and you're thinking butt goes back. Just be careful not to slip, and you say nice and relaxed, and you get your head down as low as you can, and everything really stretches out. You don't want to make sure you curve anything. You say nice and relaxed, and then repeat this a few times You really hold that position so you can feel a nice stretch in your lower back, and especially where your shoulders are. So everything really starts to loosen up the more you stretch. The more frequently you do this, you'll see a big difference in your back as well as your upper body, where you'll feel a lot looser. Bird dogs are a really good exercise to use, which will help strengthen your back, but also help with your core as well. Really simple. Both hands and knees are on the floor, and you work in opposites. So your right hand will go out straight, and your left leg will go out behind you. And the aim is to try and make sure that everything is in a straight line from your fingertips straight out to your legs. If you feel it's a bit too high, just simply lower it and make sure that your fingertips all the way to your toes are in a nice straight line. It's not about trying to get your hand and your leg as high as possible. It's simply making sure that everything is nice and straight. Hence why we're working on your posture, and your core is working to make sure that you don't lose your balance. It's a good way to think like Superman, really. And then you simply repeat this so that you do 5 on each side, have a rest, and then you repeat and do a couple of more sets. Another really good exercise to strengthen your lower back would be glute bridges. Now, you can do an easy way or a slightly harder way, depending on how you're feeling. The best way to do this is to just simply lay down, try not to use your hands for aid. Now, simply think, push your heels into the floor, and you're simply pushing your hips up nice and high so that your knees to your hips are in a diagonal line, and then you simply relax. You can do this 10 times. Think, squeeze your glutes, make sure everything's nice and tight before you then relax. And you make sure you hold that position to really engage your core and make sure that your lower back works. If you want to make it slightly harder, you try with one leg. So you keep one leg off the floor, use this leg to drive upwards, making sure you're in the same position I spoke about earlier, core tightened, hip nice and straight and locked, and then you relax. Keep this leg working, and then it's up to you how many times you want to try and do this. My advice would be 10 on each leg, or if you're just going to use both legs, simply 10 times and relax. Again, 3 sets. Prone W's are a really good way to improve your upper back and make sure you have good control of your shoulder to avoid that leaning forward action. So simply making a W with your arms and shoulders, and all you're doing is tensing up your back so that your hands and your elbows come off the floor very slightly, and you feel a slight tension in between your shoulder blade and the middle of your back before you then relax. And then you can simply repeat this a few times, making sure that your arms don't flop or relax. Keep everything nice and tight and keep everything under control while doing these exercises. Again, simply 10 reps would do, and you can simply do 3 sets of these, and before you know it, you'll start to notice a little bit of strengthening in the muscles in your back. The last and final tip is just simply be aware of how you are sitting and how you are standing for long durations of time, whether that's at home or even at work. One of the common things is when people are sitting at the computer at work, they tend to hunch over the keyboard and sit like this, which then means over time their posture tends to stay like this. Or even if you're sitting in front of the TV, playing on the PlayStation, for example, having that feeling of leaning forward because you're getting really into your game. This is the posture that tends to occur quite a lot of the time. And over time, this then becomes the normal position that you tend to be in. So the key thing that you can do to avoid that would be 1, using the back brace that you saw earlier in the video. Simply taking breaks is going to be such a big thing that you can do. Rather than sitting around for hours on end, take breaks every half an hour, every 45 minutes, just to move around and do some very simple stretches. You don't have to make them complicated stretches. It's just making sure that you get up and you move and you're encouraging mobility in your body.